Welcome to the Feather Shawl Crochet Along. So I'm using Patons Decor, a mix of acrylic and wool blend in a toasty gray color. If we look on the label, it has a suggestion for crochet hook of 5mm hook. I am suggesting that you want to go up about a hook size and a half. I know I crochet quite loosely, so I'm going up one size, a 6mm. If you are tighter, I would suggest using a 6.5 or even a 7mm hook size, or if you're using the same weight. So this is a worsted weight yarn I'm using. In my country, we label it as weight number 4. So depending on where you're from, you will have different ways of labeling your yarn and your hook sizes. So just remember about 3 sizes up, 3 half sizes from the recommended hook size to start. For the first row, we are going to be making a half double crochet. So you have the option of making these foundation half double crochet or chaining the length you prefer and working a half double crochet into those stitches. If you're working the foundation half double crochet, there is a bit of stretch to this method, so you want to make sure you're working loosely, and for your finished measurement, you want to allow for a little bit of extra stretch, just so you're aware of that. If you are making a chain, you will work a half double crochet into the 3rd chain from your hook to work down the row. So this first row of half double crochet, you want to make as long as your desired length. So if you've measured, one guideline is from fingertip up your arm, around your neck, down the other arm to the next fingertip, but you can make it shorter or longer, whichever you prefer. Again, allowing for a little bit of stretch if you're working the foundation chain method. So you can go ahead and work this first row for your desired length. So an alternate method of starting this first row is to do a chain for as long as your desired length is, and then we'll half double crochet into the chains, but we're going to go on the back side of the chain, and you can see this 3rd bump here, or 3rd loop. So it's the back bump of the chain. So the front side is nice and flat with those V's of the stitches. You roll it over and you can see that extra loop, the back bump. So the 3rd one from the hook, 1, 2, 3, we will half double crochet in that back bump and in each of the back bumps of each chain all the way down the length. So that's an alternate way to start. When you work the chain this way with a half double crochet, you get this nice stitches across the bottom to work into when we come to the border section. So you can choose which method you prefer and make your first row. So when you have measured and are happy with your length of your starting row, we need to make sure we count our stitches. The pattern calls for a multiple of 2 plus 1. So for what that means for us, all we really need to know is that we need to have an odd number of stitches in our final count. So I have made 181 foundation crochet. I'm using a heavier weight yarn and a size 6mm hook. So depending on your yarn weight, your hook size, and your tension, everyone will have a different starting number for their foundation row, and particularly depending on the preferred length. All we need to know and remember is that we need to have an odd number of stitches at the end of row 1. So we'll chain and turn, and then we'll work a half double crochet in that very first stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet. And we want to work that all the way down the row. Chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet. So for row 2, you can work that all the way down the row. So for row 3, we chain 1 and turn. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We'll place a half double crochet in this very first stitch, chain 1. Then we'll work the feather stitch. For a more detailed version of how to work the feather stitch, please see the link in the description for working the feather stitch, but I'll show you quickly here. We yarn over, insert into the space, pull up a loop. We want to have a nice and long loop. Yarn over, working into our skip stitch down below. We pull up another loop, nice and long. Yarn over and into that next chain 1 space, pull up a loop. We'll have 7 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops for that first feather stitch. We'll chain 1 and work another feather stitch. So in the same space as our last part of our first feather, we'll insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, working down into the skip stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, and into that next space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, chain 1. So you continue to work these feather stitches all the way down the row, and I will meet you just at the end of the row to show you how to finish the row. You want to keep these nice and loose. So when you've worked your way down the row, the last feather stitch will be in that last chain 1 space. We chain 1 after that feather stitch and then place a half double crochet in the last stitch of the row to finish the row. Then you may want to measure at this point and see if it's still the measurement you prefer. If it has stretched out too much, you might want to redo from the starting foundation chain again, or if it's not long enough, you might want to redo as well. It's easier at this point to do that than later on. There will be a border that goes around the entire shawl, and you can customize that to whatever width you prefer as well. So just keep that in mind too as you're working this. So then for the next row, we'll chain 1 and turn, half double crochet in that starting half double crochet, chain 1. Then we'll yarn over, go into this first space for the first loop of the feather stitch, yarn over, then we'll go down into the space 2 rows below, yarn over and into the space on the other side of the feather stitch, pull through all 7, chain 1. So into that same space to pull up a loop, yarn over into the space the next row down, pull up a loop, yarn over and into the next space. Okay, so you can finish that row and repeat row 3 for the width that you desire. Again, we will end with a half double crochet row, and like I said, there'll be a small border that you can make larger if you wish. So keep that in mind as you judge how wide you want to make this and how many rows of the feather stitch. So when you have worked your desired width of these rows of feather stitch, we will add 1 more row of half double crochet to match our starting edge. So you will chain 1 after your last feather stitch and turn your work. So we will chain 1, place that half double crochet in the first stitch. We will half double crochet in each space and in each feather stitch. Half double crochet in the space and in the top of the feather stitch. So you can work that down the row, and I'll meet you just at the end of the row. When you've worked those half double crochet down the row, we will place 1 in this last space past that last feather stitch and in the half double crochet at the end of the row. If you are going to continue your border with the same color, you do not need to fasten off. And part 1 is complete.